You're listening to The Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, please join us on Patreon.
You are listening to Paris Underground Radio. My name is Annette Delou, and I am the host of The Heart of You. So today we are going to be discussing EFT tapping. And I have with me Simona DiSanto. She is a psychotherapist and personal-centered approach, certified EFT practitioner, NLP practitioner, sophrologist, and coach, as well as she speaks English, Italian, and French fluently. She's amazing. Simona, I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you so much for all your kind words. And thank you for having me here.
So EFT tapping, this is a really interesting subject because I know a little bit about it, but I've never quite practiced it myself. So I'm kind of a newbie to this as well. So why don't you go ahead and just dive into telling us what exactly is EFT tapping?
Perfect. So EFT, that very often is called tapping, is emotional freedom technique. And this technique works on the meridian and at the same time on some psychological, let's say, problems you might have. So we do the two things at the same time. So in some way, we put together what is the Western idea with the Eastern idea. So we work on what are the energetic channel and at the same time on what are the psychological blocks or the emotional blocks, I would prefer to say. And it's a very easy technique to learn, to do by yourself also, and has been created from an engineer. I think it's one of the few techniques that has been created from someone that it was not with a career, the typical career of a psychotherapist or psychiatrist or whatever. So, and it's funny because myself, I'm an engineer, and when I learned the technique, I didn't know that the founder, Gary Craig, was an engineer too. So when I discovered, I was like, yes, everything has a sense.
Can you explain what are meridians for people who might not know what those are?
Okay, so for the Eastern medicine, let's say our bodies are crossed from channel of energies. And when we have some, let's call it physical pain or emotional pain, it means that there is some block in one or more of those channels. And so normally what they do is to work on those channels. While, for example, for us on the Western side, we tend to work directly on the pain in the body, or if it's emotional pain, to go to search, maybe in an analytic way, the why and how and all these kind of things. So from more, let's say, a mental point of view, if you could say. So with EFT, we put the two different point of view together and we work at the same time, both sides. And this is the magic of this technique. And it's so simple that very often I have clients that just look at me and say, but yeah, but it's not possible that it's working if it's so simple. And it sounds almost like a technique for kids, just playing. But actually, the point is why we always have to believe that the complicated things are the one that works. Why instead maybe the key is really the simplicity.
Right. Well, and quite frankly, children playing, we could all use a little bit more of that. Like actually allowing our inner child and our, big child to go out and play more. Sometimes that can actually make a huge difference. So
fully agree.
I'm all for simple.
So it means that it can be used from the most easy thing, like, I don't know, sometimes it might be, when you wake up in the morning and you can't, I don't know, someone might feel like he has to wake up, but sometimes you might have, how do you call it in English, ache, when you do achum, achum, achum.
Oh, sneeze.
Yes, in a such continuous way that maybe you can't breathe. Well, you can use EFT. But I personally use a lot EFT, for example, with traumas, for healing traumas. So the range of possibilities it's amazing with EFT
Mm.
because it really allows you to work to different levels without putting the fingers directly in the wound. So, for example, it means also that if a person that went through to something particularly heavy, let's call it trauma with a big T, the pain is already to discuss with a therapist of what happened. And instead in EFT, we do not need to go through the details. The person, for example, can just choose specific words that for them it means that they are talking with me about what they went through, and then we use EFT to go through that without that the person go to live again fully the situation, and therefore in some way is like healing the wounds without, as I was saying before, going to with a finger inside when it's really painful.
Yeah. Yeah. And going in and basically, poking at the wound and saying, okay, well, I have to actually dive into this in order to heal it. Well, that sounds like you don't necessarily have to do that. That's incredible because it's similar, when you're dealing with past lives as well. There's the option of, doing a regression where you actually go and experience the past life yourself, which could be traumatic. You could be reliving that trauma, or you can, sort of access the Akashic records and sort of, look at it from an observer standpoint, get that information and not have to relive it, right? And yeah, and that's important because what we're talking about here is the trauma that's living within the body. So even if you're not conscious of it, it's still there, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There is a memory somewhere that needs to be clear up. And in fact, I use EFT also for doing the regression, as you were saying, but also to go to work through what it could be some generational trauma.
Right.
And then for those that are even more open mind to what are parallel lives, maybe. But there I also mix some NLP and some other stuff. But EFT can be used really for going through really different levels, depending on how much we are open and how much we want to go far.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned NLP, and tell us a little bit what that is. We're actually going to be doing another episode with you, and we're going to be talking about NLP specifically, but just for people who don't know what it is, can you just tell them what it is?
So yes, NLP is stay for neuro-linguistic programming, and is starting from the idea that in some way we can reprogram what are our thoughts and limiting belief, and therefore use it from a therapeutic point of view to reorganize our way of our pattern in some way. The way that normally we behave, it might be change. Because let's start like this from behind. Without thinking about NLP and EFT or all the other techniques, we could imagine that every time we have a trauma or some own experience that is difficult or even positive, we create beliefs and thoughts and ideas around how things should then run in the present and the future. So in some way, we start to organize our mind, let's say in a certain way, like exactly you might consider to do it in your kitchen, where you organize the dishes in a place, blah, 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 blah. What we can do, for example, with NLP is, let's say, to redesign how you organize your kitchen. So in this case, are you really sure you would like to have the dishes there? Because maybe the dishes would be better in another place that are nearest, I don't know, to the area where you are cooking, because maybe every time you take the dishes on the other side of the kitchen, you hit the table and you have pain somewhere. I don't know if this metaphor works, but
Yeah,
the
it works.
idea is this.
Yeah.
So, and for example, we are going to work on maybe even a single word that the person might use, like, for example, someone that has been cheating from his man, and maybe might start to say things like, all men, I can't trust all men, or for sure, if I will have another relation, I will be cheated because all men cheat.
Right.
And the point is, this person has started to fix somewhere in his mind that all men are like this. So we start from the all to arrive to the point where the person realizes that, yes, I had this experience, but it doesn't mean that it's going to happen again.
Right.
But it's a kind of process that we go through that help us to either sentence, either question, and either gesture that we might use to reprogram the mind and let, for example, accept the person that actually, yes, before she was thinking that it's impossible to find a trustful man. And instead, after, she might finally realize that, okay, yes, I've been through a bad experience, but there are plenty of options in the sea.
With EFT in that respect, so for example, if you want to take the current example of you have been in a relationship and the person has cheated on you, and you're not necessarily in that place where you're looking at the other person and, where we can, be in a standpoint of, oh, okay, so I wonder what they must have been going through with their own self-worth to be able to make a decision like that. So it has nothing to do with me, and it has everything to do with them and their experience in that respect. So if I choose to walk away from that situation, I'll do that. Like, you can very logically say these things, right? But when you know this, and when the trauma is still within your body, like, there's a disconnect there,
Yes.
right? So, and that's where EFT comes in, to be able to sort of dislodge that sort of deep embedded belief that, let's say, all men cheat, right? That's within your body, correct?
Yeah, definitely. And we can go just there and just start from already ask to the person, okay, how do you feel with respect to the fact of this person that has cheating you? And maybe she could start saying, I don't know, I feel betrayed. I feel sad. I feel very often I feel really anger.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start from the anger, from 1 to 10, how much you are with this anger. And so the person decide a number, and then normally what we can try to work is, okay, describe me before this anger. Where do you feel it? Which color it has? There is a form maybe that you can give to this feeling that you have. The idea is to, at least what I really like, is to bring the person to describe me what is feeling. First, because a person that doesn't feel good normally is, let's say, on the top of the building, in the sense that in the mind. So in some way to feel less, the tendency is to think a lot and do not longer feel.
Right.
So the idea is, while the person is describing me already what he feels, they have to go inside the body and start to dig there to try to explain me what they really feel. And what I normally ask is, imagine you are a kid and imagine that I am a kid. If we were a kid, what would you use for explain me what you are really feeling? I'm a kid of 3 years old. I have no idea what does it mean that you have anger. I have no idea. Please explain me. And there is when the person starts to use his creativity, and he might say something like, I don't know, I feel that I have a big hole all red, or I don't know. People can choose really the most strange things. And we start from there and we start to tap in, okay, even if I feel that I have this big red hole, I accept how I feel. And we start a circuit, and we see how much at the end of this circuit the person feel less of that emotion. And then we are going to ask, is it still this emotion? Is it still the same color, the same form? Is it still in the same place of your body? Or do you have some tension different that before they were not there? And so it starts a journey inside the mind and the body that brings the person to get in contact and transform and transform what they really feel. And normally at the end of a session, the person is quite free from, let's say, the most basic blocks about a specific situation. Then, of course, it's like onions. There are thousands of layers depending on how much the trauma was a big T or a small T.
Are you fascinated with all of the different terroirs, or the various different regions of France, and the cheese and the wine and all of the gastronomy that comes from each territory? If so, this is the podcast for you. It is the Terroir podcast with Caroline Connor and Emily Monaco. Head to parisundergroundradio.com. We will be right back with The Heart of You after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to The Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio.
And we can work like this also through the limiting belief. That could be limiting belief around money, or limiting belief about, I don't know, someone that tomorrow have an interview for a job and might feel like you really would like that job, but there will be for sure thousands of other people that have a best experience or have a really great curriculum or will be able to speak better than them. Very often for us expatriate, imagine to speak in another language. It might be already a point where, yeah, but they were not going to take me because I'm not fully fluent. You know, this kind of limiting belief that in some way, if they are still there, they might sabotaging you during an interview. And actually, if you can work around them, normally they no longer create problems.
Yeah, that's a really good example, because especially with all of the people who are listening out there, who are living in France, who are from abroad, who are from other places, myself included, I sometimes, even when I just go to speak French, I clam up and I can't speak because I'm like, oh, I'm just, all the wrong words are going to come out. So I'm just not going to say anything. So I'm just going to sit here and not say anything. and it's silly because, you know, once I start speaking, even if it's not perfect, even if I sound like a 6-year-old, it's fine because I'm getting my point across. I am actually communicating. And the more you do it, the better you are at it and that kind of thing. So it is that element of having that limiting belief within myself of, well, I don't want to do this because it's all going to come out wrong and it needs to be perfect before it comes out of my mouth. And that's completely untrue, right?
Yeah, exactly. Are all those thoughts that we create in ourselves that actually are just based on fears of not being good enough, or things that we might have heard in our childhood, or from the culture itself, the school itself that we went through. There are so many little things that might have influenced our way of living the daily life.
Right. Well, and the one thing that I wanted to mention too, and you had talked about some of these questions that you're asking your clients in the sessions. So if they're going through the tapping process and they are basically working on one particular issue, you as a practitioner, you are able to sort of ask the right questions, see where they are, interpret where they are, and see where to go next. And it's more of a like a co-creation and a guidance between the two of you to get to the bottom of whatever big T trauma or little T trauma it is, right?
Definitely.
So I wanted to mention that simply because, you know, at the end of this episode, we are going to go through what exactly tapping is, how you do it. So everybody out there listening right now will be able to do it at the end of this podcast episode. But there is a difference between doing it yourself, and of course you can, but also doing it with a practitioner. You can go deeper. You can go to places that you wouldn't necessarily go to on your own because you wouldn't have that sort of outside perspective to be able to see where you need to go next, correct?
Yeah, the difference between the fact that you can do it alone, and this is absolutely great about this technique, and the fact of do it also with a therapist is really that when you are doing it alone, what is safe is that alone on yourself. After I'm going to explain a few things. If you do it alone on yourself, your subconscious, because anyway, what it works behind all is the subconscious. So your subconscious will be your firewall, respect to what is your pain. So you are going to arrive to a certain level depending on what you are working in on several subjects. You might find that even if you tap on that thing every single day, and there are a lot of people that are doing, and they are amazing. I really compliment them because there is discipline. There might be moments where you feel stuck, like you can't go further a certain level, but that is because your subconscious is really saying, oh, no, you are touching something that is too far, let's wait, it's not the moment, and blah, blah, blah. When you go to a therapist, the first point I found that is really different is that When you are with a therapist, what you are doing is just repeating what the therapist propose you as wording, and be a kind of mirror of each other. I normally, as I work in internet, I normally let the other person tapping and copy me like we are one the mirror of the other. So, and then face to face, it might be that I'm tapping on the person, depending on how the people feel. But the point is, when it's someone else or you are following someone else, there is a disconnection between you and your subconscious mind that makes things even more open, let's say,
Right.
for improving in the same subject that you have done alone. It's like open a new door. It's like, let's say, you get in an apartment, you get the key of the apartment with EFT, you work by yourself, but you get the key to enter in the first hall. But when you are with someone else, maybe that someone else is able to bring you to the kitchen together, okay? Because maybe alone you couldn't feel super safe to get to the kitchen level. So that is the first step, is the fact that in some way, when you have someone else and you're following the other one, you are no longer keeping under control, fully under control, all things. Therefore, you are more open. Then there is the point of having a person that is not involved in your pain and therefore is more objective respect to what you are living, and also grab words and things and feeling that you might not be conscious of, and that might be the key to release things in a faster way and with less pain than maybe doing it on long term by yourself. There is already the difference. Normally, when I work with my clients, I teach them EFT and I give them some specific sentences that they can keep going working on them. So is there that is, like you're saying, the co-creation, because together we have clean up. It's like this. It's like, imagine that together we have decide and work out which is the best way to clean their apartment. And then what they do is to use EFT daily to keep clean the apartment. Okay. And then when they have those days where maybe those periods where maybe at work there is something that is not really working, maybe there is too much work, or maybe someone at home is sick and you need to give more effort, and therefore your dishes in the sink start to accumulate. Then you can decide, am I going to use EFT alone, and it means I'm going to take a day off to clean up the whole house, or am I going to the therapist or to Simona to help me to clear up everything in 1 hour? But it doesn't mean that you are not able to do it alone. It means also that the huge difference is how long are you going to take? And also sometimes it's not possible that you clean up an house that you have left there unclean from too long.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and one of the things that just popped into my head about another way you could use this is, for example, if I'm going to you and I'm having these EFT sessions, you're giving me the tools to be able to use these techniques when I need them. So, for example, right now the energies are really strong, right? And so as you're going through a spiritual awakening, you go through various different ascension symptoms in your body. And I've been through this for the last, I would say, 5 years easily, if not longer. And it took a while for me to figure out what those things were, right? I spent many times in, going to the doctor and trying to figure out what was wrong with me, to find out there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. So recently I've been having some back tension, some muscle tension in my back and my neck. And I was like, I know it's energetic and I don't know where it's coming from, but it's uncomfortable. So like if I had these techniques and I feel that type of symptom come on, I would be able to use EFT to be able to sort of calm the nervous system down and be able to sort of deal with those ascension symptoms, I should say, on a much less strong basis, right?
Absolutely. And also, in fact, EFT, doesn't matter if it's for ascension issue or not, is really useful for chronic pain. Because actually, let's say that you have a pain in the neck that is maybe chronic or not, you can just start to tap through this pain and make a full tour and double check, okay, it's better or it's not better or whatever. So exactly like for the ascension issue, once you know that from a medical point of view, there is nothing you can do with it. Fortunately, it means that there is no problem from that point of view. The idea is, yes, you can use EFT because actually, if you have some ascension pain, actually it means that the energies are trying to clear up some blocks, energetic blocks. We can call it emotional thoughts, belief, or whatever. It's anyway an energetic blocks. And eventually you could also just tap on the different meridians and you are going to feel already that there is something that is moving. And when you put this together with drinking water, together with having your bath with Epsom salt and whatever, it's another way, another tool that you can use to take care of yourself in those moments where actually what the universe has just decided you are ready for the next steps. But
Right.
voila, you just need to leave the luggage.
I'm ready to get started. I'm like, I want to do this now. I already I have a running list right now in my head of all the things. I'm like, ooh, I could do it regarding this and this and this and this. And oh, this would be helpful. So
now the opportunity to improve something with EFT are amazing. I mean, I don't know. I know that myself, I can find something new every day. So it depends really on the person, on the creativity, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's the technique that I use the most, and I like also to mix it with others because I found that together they are even more powerful. But for example, when someone asks me why you have not done a diploma in EMDR, for example, I personally try everything also because I'm also a trauma survivor. But for me, EFT is the technique the most simple, the one that is self-helping, and at the same times the one that I've seen that keep the work done for a very long time. It's a kind of long-term work. Yeah, so I mean, I'm super fan of this technique.
so you're saying essentially it's cumulative, right?
Absolutely, yes. And now, even from a scientific point of view, finally they have started to make scientific studies between the difference of EMDR, EFT, what works better with veterans, for example, and these kind of things. And actually, the results are exactly the same between one and the other. So it depends. I think everyone should really try the different things depending. And what I found of EFT is really that probably is like salt in the kitchen. You need it a little bit everywhere, even on the cake. I mean, in the cake, if you put a little bit of salt, it gives that kind of tone more. But at the same time, in other plate is absolutely functional. So yeah, I think it is something that, I mean, I know that in different countries now it's been introduced even at school. And I think that if children can already use it, we can only have benefits with that. Also because when we are tapping, we are also working on the chemistry of the body. And therefore, even for just a kind of anxiety, stress, the point is that you are going to lower down the different hormones that anyway are at the base of those reactions. So the application are enormous.
Wow. If you're enjoying this episode of The Heart of You, you may enjoy our sister podcast, Life in Diasporis, which attempts to understand what it means to be Black in a European country in the 21st century through enlightened and thoughtful discussions. Listen now to Life in Diasporis on Paris Underground Radio. We will be right back with The Heart of You after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to The Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio. I wanted to ask you, because we're talking about, traumas. We're talking about big T, little t traumas. We're also talking about pain in the body and that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the other aspects that may be a little bit lighter? So, maybe like belief systems that are maybe not necessarily detrimental to what you're doing right now, but that could be creating blocks or whatever it happens to be. What other smaller things that you can work on with EFT?
It could be, let's talk, for example, about the money. The fact that for many people, the idea is that if, let's say, millionaires, they are crap people, or that, and maybe many people might not realize that that is the behind thoughts, but it might be used for cleaning up what are your fears around becoming abundant, or what are your fears around failing, for example. And therefore, there, just work around, which is my relation with money? Is money something that has been like in the family seen like kind of diabolic? People that have money are never nice, people that are greed, blah, blah, blah. So going to work about this kind of thoughts that we might have here and integrated, for example, or it might be one of those that I hear thousands of times is about you need to work hard to gain money. Okay, but the point is, are we really sure that this is true?
Mm-hmm.
And how many times you feel that you have not worked enough to deserve that amount of money? So automatically you are not going to get that money if actually you consider that you have to broke yourself completely from a physical point of view, a mental point of view, and blah, blah. You are feeling so guilty that you cannot actually be open to receive those money. So the idea would be to work on those thoughts that we realize that we have constantly in our mind. So the chat that we have inside, if we could be already aware of what's going on, like, let's say that you have seen a course that you want to buy. Let's say that is 200 and you think, no, I can't buy it because it's too much for my budget. Okay. So already working on that, because actually the idea of when you say that, for sure, there is another sentence that you are saying behind. Yes, because I've not done enough for getting this month, or no, because anyway, I need to have already gained, I don't know, 1,000 euro or dollars or whatever before feel that I can really buy that. And just work those sentences that are coming inside you. Or it might be also an incredible sentence that many people have. No, I'm too stupid for that course. I will not be able to do that course. So work on that one. Okay, even if I feel that right now I'm not intelligent enough, clever enough to be able to go through that course, I accept how I feel. And then you keep going to do this a little more and see if during the days things change, for example. And you might suddenly find a way to get those $200 to buy that course, for example.
And it's amazing because it sounds like even though these are sort of small, somewhat seemingly benign belief systems or statements that we hear in society all the time, when you're able to clear those, the impact they could have is actually significant within your life.
Yeah. In fact, when I speak about small trauma with a small t and big trauma, is because, for example, if you consider that almost every one of us at school have heard a teacher saying, yeah, but no, that is not good. What are you doing? Or, no, you can't do that. Now you come here in front of everybody and you start to repeat this. And depending on who you are and depending on your sensitivity and sensibility, you might leave that as a trauma, even if we can call it like a T trauma, a small T trauma. But it means that probably that sentence, no, but you are not good in writing, or no, you are not good in math, or you are not that sentence will be with you for the rest of your life, stopping you from doing fantastic things because it has been recorded there and needs to be cleared up somewhere.
You're so right. And it's so funny that you mentioned writing. And I love having these conversations with everybody who's so intuitive because like you pulled it right out, because that was something that I was told when I was in school, was that I was a crap writer. And I basically took that and I was like, cool, that's my luggage. And I took it with me for the rest of my life. So now I'm like, I'm a crap writer. I'm not good at writing. And I would say it all the time to like I'm really good at all these other things, but writing, yeah, it's not my forte. It's not what I do, and how true is that? Well, it's probably not true at all, but I took that on because of whatever person told me that, however many times. And that was it. And I never questioned it again. So yeah, that's really interesting.
So from this evening, work around your writing. Even if someone once told me that I was not good enough in writing, I accept how I felt until now. I accept how I feel. I accept that that person was thinking in that way, but that maybe is not true. You open doors inside your brain to rebuild different beliefs.
Beautiful. So let's go into the statements. So before we go into the actual tapping, I'm noticing that you're saying these statements as you start to tap. So what are the statements that you say?
Normally, you start a statement with even, if in the sense that you put a doubt, okay? So even though what there is, do you have some pain somewhere in your body right now?
I've been experiencing the back pain because of the ascension symptoms. Yeah.
Okay. Even though, even though I have my back pain that is hurting right now, you might say something positive like, I accept how I feel, or I completely and deeply love and accept myself, or I completely accept myself. Depends which are the positive wording that you feel are good for you. Because I'm saying this because normally, let's say the classical sentence that you can hear and read everywhere is even though, then what you have, I fully, completely love and accept myself.
Mm.
But depending on which is your culture, your education, your country, and whatever, already the word love might be too much and might just put the person in a kind of, oh my God, no, that is not possible. I can't love myself. So already with I accept how I feel, it might be already a really good step. So it's always putting out something, the problem, and put together something that is positive.
So, for example, I'm going to be fully transparent and open here. So, during the pandemic, I gained a few kilos, several kilos in regards to, just not being as active and things like that. And, having to struggle with my weight has been something that has been an ongoing for my whole life. And right now, I'm feeling kind of crappy about it. And I really want to work on it. So I'm exercising more, I'm doing all of these things, but I'm trying to do it in a mindful way that is accepting exactly where I am right now, but then listening to my body and what my body needs, even if it isn't going to the gym every day, or even if it isn't working out every day, listening to my body and saying, okay, maybe my body wants to do yoga today instead of doing strength training, or trying to consciously do that. So this is a process that I'm going through. And if I were to go through the EFT on that aspect, and I were to say that even though I've gained this extra weight during the pandemic, I still love and accept myself. If I say I still love and accept myself, if it's not entirely true at this moment, do you still say that? Because it's not
Okay.
really true at the moment, because I'm still working through that judgment of myself for gaining the weight during the pandemic. So I'm like, okay, even though I know that so many people have the same issue during the pandemic, I'm still judging myself for it.
There are different currents about the affirmation, the famous positive affirmation. When you go in internet, you can find all those fantastic videos where they say, I'm worthy, I'm abundance, I'm a blah, blah, blah. And it's true. Actually, depending on where you are with that, if you are fully aligned or not, you might feel comfortable or not to repeat them. And depending on where you are, you might have great effect or do not at all effect. So what I normally propose is to change the wording with I choose. So let's make, for example, you were saying that is love and accept that you do not feel it completely.
Correct.
Correct. So for example, if you close your eyes and we just say, even if I have this weight, I love and accept myself anyway. Just double check how you feel if there is something that is disconnected somewhere.
So even though I have gained this extra weight, still love and accept myself anyway.
Tell me where you have done.
So it's not a feeling that I'm getting. It's actually just my brain. It's just my brain saying, no, you don't.
Perfect. Okay, good. Now let's try something different. even though I have gained this weight,
even though I have gained this weight,
I choose
to
love and accept myself anyway.
love and accept myself anyway.
Mm-hmm. I choose to love and accept myself anyway.
Yeah. There's a huge difference there.
Okay, so you got a different thoughts about that?
Yeah, my thoughts couldn't respond.
Perfect.
Literally, the words that came out were, I got nothing.
So it's one of the video that I prepare where I want really to help a person to understand which are the affirmation that they can use because they are aligned with that, and so get some effect. And when they are not aligned, what they can change. And for example, you could add, I choose. Because in that way, you are saying to your subconscious, no worry, I know that actually you can't right now. But what about if we work together and we just decide right now that in this specific moment, things are like that?
Right. That's a really huge distinction between those things, because especially in the spiritual community, if you have been doing any sort of spiritual practice, it doesn't matter what it is, there's an idea that has permeated through the spiritual community that if you do these positive affirmations and, it's really important for manifestation, and that is true to a certain extent, but if you're doing it to just cover up what is underneath, it's not going to have an effect because you're not getting to the root of what is the limiting belief. What is that belief system? What is the trauma? What are those things that are sort of blocking you or preventing you from doing the things that you want to do, or that your life purposes, or whatever it happens to be? So when it comes to those positive affirmations, I always like to say to people that, yes, they're really great as long as you're not ignoring what is going on within yourself, right?
I totally agree. And I also think that I think there has been a huge change in the sense that before, when let's say people have started to talk about the power of affirmation, I think that was possible actually to reprogram without going to work deeper. I think it was possible to put the dust under the carpet and wait there, Instead, I think that now the universe doesn't want this anymore. Is really pushing us to work deeply and clear up what there is under the carpet. Therefore, I think it's for that. It's one of the reasons I think affirmation has before in traditional way did not work really anymore, or at least let's say they work, but on really long term. Discipline you need to have to repeat every day all those kind of things and let them be fully integrated. From my point of view, now it takes ages, while instead if you are in your own feeling, even if they are fully, fully painful, I have the impression that instead you can change even from one day to the other and make what before with an affirmation might have taken, let's say, 6 months if we still want to talk about time, and now maybe it could be a switch in a few hours. So this is what I feel and what I see. I have the impression also with clients that clients of some years ago might take a certain time. And now sometimes I'm like, how is it possible we did it so fast? So I really see huge changes.
I love Paris for all of its myriad of options of things to do throughout each and every day. However, it can get a little overwhelming sometimes to figure out what you want to do because there's so much to do. If you're in this position, I highly recommend you listen to Don't Miss This with Jennifer Garrity. She gives you the best of what is going on in Paris for each particular week. It is definitely something I listen to every Sunday, so go and check it out at parisundergroundradio.com. We will be right back with The Heart of You after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to The Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio. So why don't we start going into the actual process of tapping?
Okay, so let's say that normally we start from the side of the hand. So what we call it, the karate point. because it's really the side of the end. The end can be the left side, the right side. You can change it. There is no rules there really. So the idea is to tap from here. There are so many different little things. Okay, so let's start with the traditional or one. Okay, I'm going to show the tapping of every point. So we start from the side of the hand, and then we go on the eyebrow, at the corner between the nose and the eyebrow, then on the side of the eye, under the eye, under the nose, on the chin, and then there is a point in the collarbone that is more sensible, Yeah, you might feel like in a point there is something more that is like bling bling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel it. I had to tap around a little bit to feel where that point
Yes,
was,
you
but
need to find it. Everyone has its own, but anyway, it's around what do you call it, collarbone.
Yeah.
And then there is another point that's not always easy to explain, but is under the arm where your bra is passing.
Okay.
Okay, can you feel it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's say that this is a full circuit, traditional circuit. So while we are tapping, we might repeat the sentence, or we might just decide to tap like this, those points in this, how do you call it, path or loop. Okay. If you are in the metro, let's say, or anyway in a public place where maybe you do not feel particularly comfortable to tapping everywhere on your face because maybe people might look at you, even if I see sometimes people doing it, you might always use a point that is, let me explain this, is the corner of your nail on your, how do you call it, this one?
Thumb? On your thumb?
And you tap with the index on that point, and maybe you have your hand in your pocket and you can repeat your sentence, like, even if right now I'm really stressed, I accept how I feel, and you keep going to just tap this point. So this is, let's say, is the discrete EFT.
Nice.
For when you are in a meeting and maybe you are listening to your boss saying really things that you would like just to stop to hear or whatever. When you have someone that is disgusting you or whatever, but you cannot show it. Please imagine to repeat the sentence inside yourself and just tap the corner of your thumbnails, and you're going to feel some difference.
So it's right by the cuticle of your thumbnail, right?
Yes, exactly. So with this point here, I never know how to explain it. Actually, in fact,
Good way to explain it, I think. Yeah. So this is sort of the pocket EFT technique.
yes, that is really useful.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
Fantastic.
And then you add the sentence that normally are this. You repeat the basic sentence we have said before. So even though, then your problem, and I accept how I feel. Let's say the positive sentence. You repeat it 3 times here on the side of the hand. So until you have repeated those 3 times, you still are on the side of your hand. And then you can start to repeat the same sentence, tapping on all these other points. So even though I feel I'm not feeling good today, I accept how I feel. And you keep going on the chin, on the collarbone, under the arm, and you make your tour. The best thing is to ask yourself before starting where you are with that problem from 0 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
And double check at the end of a loop where you are so that you know where you have to go. But also double check at the end of the loop if you're still thinking about that problem or if there is something else you are thinking right now, and then follow that something else.
Oh, I see. So like you're following the thread.
Yeah. When you follow the flow, is your subconscious that is guiding you on which are the real point to work. And I think it's fantastic because it brings you to be really in the present moment.
Wow. Oh, I can't wait to get started on this. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because like the way that Simona and I met was through a Facebook group called Women Living in Paris. And And it was one of those beautiful synchronistic events where, she wrote me and we had a conversation before we hopped on this recording. And, we just had a lot of things to talk about and things that were in common. And I always feel like people who are, coming into your life are divinely guided. You kind of gravitate toward each other for a reason. Yeah. So not only do I feel like I've made a really good friend, but I also am like, okay, so when can we do our session? When can we do our EFT? Because I know this is something I need. And that's a beautiful part about all of these different techniques, and the techniques we're going to talk about in the next episode as well, is that all of these techniques are all beautiful ways to really get to the root of these belief systems and the issues and the traumas. And it's a way for ourselves to ascend even more, even higher. And not every single modality is going to resonate with everybody, which is why on this podcast, I like to give all of the options that people can have for their ascension process. And if you are seeing something that really resonates with you, or if you're hearing something that really resonates with you, follow that and go for it, right? And then keep that other information in the back of your head, because sometimes that might come up another time. Because I remember there was a point in time, I think this was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, where I found EFT, and I actually downloaded like a little, I bought like a really quick, workbook, or it was some, I don't even remember what it was, but it was like, $10 or something like that. It wasn't, expensive, but I bought it, but I never used it. And I know the reason why is because it was just not the right time for me. But it was one of those things where the universe will give you the little hint of something. Hey, this is coming up. Like, it might be a couple of years before you actually pick this up again, but it's going to happen. And you and I talked about this when we talked about books, like people giving you books and you're like, oh yeah, that's nice. And you put it back in your bookshelf, and then, come back and you're like, oh, right, I haven't read that book. Maybe I should read that book, because
Exactly. Yeah.
it's pertinent right now. Right.
It's
So,
always when it's the right time, anyway, you are going to put again in face of what you have to do in that moment.
and likewise, anybody who's listening to this podcast right now, whether you're listening, in 2022 when we're recording this, or 10 years from now, it's going to be relevant to you no matter what. Right.
Yeah. In particular, if they have arrived until now, maybe it's the time to try to EFT.
Yeah, absolutely. So Simona's going to be joining us again for the next episode, where we're going to be talking about NLP. And for the time being, if you want to just let everybody know how they can get in contact with you, what your website is, your social media.
Okay, so you can find me under the name Versione 21 is the Italian name of version. So it's written really like version. You just have to add an E at the end.
V as in Victor, ERSIONE 21.com. That's correct?
Yes, that one is there. There I have the 3 pages in French, English, and Italian. But anyway, if you have any question, you just write to versione21 gmail.com. Sorry. You can just type my name, and you can find me on Instagram, always under Versione21, but it should come out with my name, or on LinkedIn.
Okay, so thank you so much for everybody joining us today. Thank you, Simona. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you, as always.
Thank you.
And you can reach me at infinitesoullove.com, all social media at infinitesoullove1111. That's Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Oh, as well as YouTube. Thank you, Paris Underground Radio, for producing this episode. And we will see you in the next episode. Thanks so much.
This episode of The Heart of You was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, please join us on Patreon.